Today on Empowering Workplaces, we're going to be talking about showing your worth to fast track into leadership roles. We're joined by Shelmina Abji, whose purpose in life is to advance gender equality in leadership roles. She's the best selling author of Show Your Worth, speaker, former IBM vice president, board member, angel investor, and distinguished alumni.
Welcome to Empowering Workplaces, a show for everyone who wants to make work better and more fulfilling. We are your hosts, culture designer Maddie Grant and organizational psychologist Sanja Licina. Join us in today's awesome conversation.
Shelmina, I am so thrilled to have you on Empowering Workplaces. I read your book and I felt like I've known you forever. I felt like you're a best friend. And so when I reached out and you agreed to join us for the conversation, I was just thrilled to have more of my friends, family, colleagues, everybody who listens to the show learn more from your wisdom. Particularly also somebody who was a young immigrant and moved over from Serbia, former Yugoslavia, to the United States. Your story of immigrating from Tanzania to United States and just catapulting your career. As I was reading that, I could not put my book down. And so, welcome again. Just wholeheartedly so happy to have you with us. Before we jump into the many questions I have prepared for you, I'd love for you to just take a few minutes and introduce yourself to our audience. So, going into our conversation, they can feel like they know you as well as I felt like I knew you reading through your book.
Well, thank you for having me, Sanja. I love the work you're doing to empower other women. And so I am honored to be speaking with you today. And so you mentioned that my purpose is to advance gender and racial equality. And I do that through my book. I also do that through speaking. I'm also a mom. I am also a wife. And so I play many roles, and each one of these roles brings meaning to my life. And one of the roles is speaking with incredible women like you who have such a different perspective to bring to this conversation. And together, we will amplify our impact.
Oh, I love that so much. And I thank you. And in preparing for this conversation, I feel like just spending a few minutes with you, I already have this like informal mentor and coach and somebody just, I can tell how much you care. And that really means a lot. And sometimes, you read a book and you feel like somebody's story resonates, and then you meet them and they meet your expectations, or maybe they exceed or maybe not. But literally in the moments that I've known you, you've exceeded every expectation of the human I thought you could possibly be. So I'm just internally grateful that somebody with your experience has stepped into, this role of really connecting with women, doing that at scale, and finding ways that you can reach so many of us so personally and really empower us. And so I'm curious, you had a very long career at IBM and a very successful one, and you stepped into motivational speaking. You became an author. What caused you? What prompted you at that point to want to lean into that and to become this really beacon for empowering women?
So, it starts with my life journey, Sanja. I
Mm.
grew up in very humble beginnings in Tanzania. I was convinced that if I obtained a college degree, I would be able to lift myself and my family out of poverty. And so that required me to leave home when I was 15, because the town in which I grew up didn't have education past 10th grade. We didn't have any money. No one in our family had been to college, but I was determined to obtain a college degree. And so it starts with my parents trusting me to leave home at 15, and we didn't even own a phone. And so from there, I had so many people that helped my success journey. And even though we grew up with humble beginnings, I come from a culture where we would much rather give than receive. So every time someone helped me, I would want to pay back. I would want to help them, but I was not in a position. However, I reached a point in my career where I had hired and promoted hundreds, if not thousands, of people. I knew how to make others successful. And so, in order to honor the people who had made me successful, I left my career at the peak of my career as one of the highest ranking women of color at IBM to help others become successful. Um, my alma mater invited me to speak at a conference called Women Moving Ahead. And that was the day I became an empowerment speaker because I realized just how much I had to share that would enable women to move ahead. And that journey of mentoring and speaking allowed me to see that my insights were transforming hundreds of careers. And that emboldened me because now I had proof of concept. I was also on a board of an organization at the United Nations Foundation level where we focused on gender justice. So I was very acutely aware of the lack of women in leadership roles. And so I decided to become a change agent because if I could help hundreds of women change their career trajectory, I could help millions of women change their career trajectory, fast track into leadership roles, and together, see, I can't do this on my own. Together, we can change that equation. Because, Sanya, you might know, and I don't have global statistics, but in United States, over 50% of the workforce are women.
Mhm.
Most of us have advanced degrees like you do, a PhD. I have a bachelor's degree from a third tier university. However, most women obtain degrees from higher ranked universities. We get better grades in school than men do. However, when we enter the workforce at the first rung of the ladder, 100 men get promoted, 66 women get promoted. And that problem gets compounded at each rung. The higher up you rise, the smaller the number gets. And then, depending on which statistics you're looking at, for women, it's about 20%. For women of color like us, it's less than 5%. We didn't become stupid overnight. It's just that what made us successful in college does not work in the workplace. And I wanted to teach that to women.
Ah, and that I think, wow, those just that last statement really resonated with me because as somebody that went through so much school, I always felt like there was a recipe for success, right? You have a book, and if you study hard enough and if you remember all the information, you'll do well in school. And there was always this prescription. And if you followed it, you can be successful. And I felt like I went into the real world and it was a different universe. There were different rules, there were different things that you had to know. Um, and I think that that's where, to your point, it becomes so critical to have somebody guide you, lead you, mentor you, because they don't teach you those kinds of things. Like, it's okay to have to figure it out, but how quickly and effectively you do it, especially earlier on in your life, is going to set such an important stage for your trajectory.
Yes, yes, yes. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thoroughly enjoyed your book. And there were, I mean, if we had, 24 hours, I would talk about all of it. For the sake of time, I had to go through and pick out what were a few key areas that I wanted to touch on. And for me personally, a couple of things have been really important in my personal life and in my career as well. And those two are building intentional relationships and intentionally focusing on your well-being. And so we'll dig into those a little bit more. And for the rest, you listeners will have to buy and read the book. And I promise you all the areas are as inspiring. So when it comes to relationships, one of the things that you talk about is a relationship with a person's manager. And that really stood out to me because now I've been in the workforce for a few decades and I've had some brilliant leaders. I've had leaders that really put me on the stage, pushed me to grow, were my biggest champions and my biggest supporters. And I actually get emotional a little bit thinking about that. And especially my first leader, a career builder, was somebody like that. And I think I got a little bit spoiled because having the first, and she was this powerhouse of a woman on top of being an amazing leader. So just this credible role model. And I thought, this is how it is. This is how the workplace works. Well, a couple dozen leaders later, not everybody was like that. And so I realized just the importance of that relationship and how you work with your direct manager and everything that they can be for you. And so I'd love to ask you the question, I guess, from two different angles. The first one is, as somebody that's in a role, what do you look for in a manager? How can you best build that relationship? How can you understand? You talked a little bit about, not every manager is maybe going to be a great fit, but when they are, how can you really take, the most out of that? And then maybe if they're not, the importance of stepping out. And then the second part would be looking at it from a reverse way. So I was mentioning when I was younger in my career, maybe I didn't know what I didn't know about the workplace. And there was so much I didn't know. I later learned. And so, as somebody that's listening to us, whether they're a woman or a man, and they're saying, listen, I really want to elevate people, I really want somebody to remember me as being a remarkable leader to them. How can I be that? So let's start first with the person themselves. So that individual listening, thinking about their manager, how can they most consciously or intentionally build that relationship?
Yeah, I love that question. So, first and foremost, I want everyone to recognize that you might think that you work for an organization, and yes, you do. However, who you work for, your direct boss, is really the person you're working for. And your direct boss has more control over your career trajectory than anything else. And so you must become. So, my book is all about being strategic and being intentional. You see, Sanya, no organization succeeds without a strategy. And I truly believe that no human being realizes their maximum potential without a strategy. And then you have to be intentional about executing upon those strategies. So, all the 8 strategies that I lay out in my book, I call them intentional strategies because a lot of people are intentional, but they don't know what they're intentional about. You have to be strategic first, and then you have to be intentional about executing on those strategies. And so you must become strategic about building relationships. And in that chapter, I talk about the higher up I rose, I understood the gravity of how you're known and who knows you. And the relationships fall in the second part as well. So it's not just the ones that you work with every day, your peers, your boss, but also your mentors and your sponsors. So let's dig deeper into your boss. As I mentioned earlier, it is incumbent upon us to be intentional and strategic about building a relationship with your boss. And the first thing you do is you understand their point of view. How can you make them successful? Because when you are invested in their success, they will also be invested in your success. And having been a leader, a first line leader, a second line leader, a third line leader, every leader knows that the higher up you rise, the more dependent you are on the people that are working for you to make you successful. And so they are vested in ensuring that you are successful. However, I ask the readers to be proactive and to initiate that relationship. And I teach you the questions. I even teach you the questions you can ask your boss to build that relationship, because it is critical that your boss understands your ambition, understands who you are, understands what it is that you want, so they can then become a coach for you and guide you towards what it is that you want. Now, the enlightened boss might actually be more proactive and ask you those questions. But I'm all about taking my career in my hand and being proactive. So, this is what I'm teaching readers. Don't wait for them to initiate the relationship. You become proactive and intentional and strategic about how you're going to build this relationship, because every decision about your career is in their hands.
Yeah.
And if you haven't taken the time to build that relationship, you're leaving your career to chance.
Yeah, and I just wanna pause and let the listeners have that sink in because I think that is so critical. I think that the point that you make that the team is really what makes that leader successful and why they're invested in it is crucial for us to know. It's crucial to say that they're going to be as good as the sum of all of us. So they do have an interest in us being at our best. However, a lot of times people are busy, even the best of the leaders, right? Even the ones that care so much. They have their own goals. They probably more than likely have their own bosses that they're trying to figure out this relationship with. And so whenever I've talked with my mentees, my team, whoever would listen, I say that same thing. And that's why I wanted to reiterate the importance of a person being proactive. That you have an opportunity to write your story, you have an opportunity that you have this leader that can help you, but don't take the chance of just waiting and having them figure it out. Know what to ask for and be proactive about it. Because I think sometimes people still think about the manager direct report relationship maybe is a little more transactional. That's in their best interest to think about, like, I have this goal, I need to finish this goal, I'll interact with my manager in the way to, report information, just get information that I need to get this done. But really the relationship is much bigger than that. And so that's why I just wanted to pause there and reiterate.
Correct. And this is what women need to know, right? Because you are not going to be in every room where decisions are being made about your career. However, your
Mm-mm.
boss is going to be in that room. And so the branding that you have created, the impressions you have left behind with your boss, the relationship that you have built with your boss is going to be in that room where your career is being discussed. And so most of us, because not only are our bosses busy, we're busy. And
Yeah.
so we don't take the time to be intentional and strategic and create value and grow and build a personal brand that is a leadership brand, and also these relationships. That's why we are not moving up the corporate ladder. We are not fast tracking into leadership roles. And so I want women and the readers, the listeners, to fast track into leadership roles. And this is one of the entry points.
Yeah. And I want to loop back to something you mentioned as well is mentors, allies. So a lot of times, sometimes we'll have an amazing relationship with our leader. Sometimes it'll be okay, and sometimes, maybe not so great. Regardless of what that relationship is, I think it's also important for people to remember that the more champions they have inside of the organization, the better. Because, and I think you talk about this in your book as well, if you're not in a room and somebody is talking about a potential promotion or, who should be in a specific role, if it's more than just your leader who knows your work, if it's more than just your leader who can advocate for who you are and the impact that you've made, that can only help your success. And not only can that relationship help improve you as a person because you're getting somebody else's perspective, but you're also in a way diversifying who you know inside the organization and who can be your champion. And I'm thinking even, your direct manager could leave at some point. And then if you've only spent time building that relationship with the one individual, you're left, maybe starting from the beginning, where if you've had these mentors and allies in different areas of the organization, more people know about who you are and your work. And I think there probably is an opportunity for women to be more proactive when it comes to that. And when it comes to really building their brand and their name and what they stand for to others as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. And the higher up you rise, the more important the role of a sponsor. Because when you are competing for executive level positions, your name would not even be considered if you don't have a successful track record, if you don't have a leadership brand, if you don't have a relationship with your boss. Your
Hmm.
name would not even be in the hat. So all those are equalized.
Yeah.
Now your unique differentiation is who is sitting around the table in that room that will advocate for you, that will put their credibility on the line and say, I trust Sanya to get the job done. So depending
Mm.
on your organization, at IBM, for example, it for an executive level role, it starts with a few candidates, and then there is a short list of three candidates. Each one of those candidates are able to do the job. None of them have done it before.
Mhm.
Now, because you're an executive, your the business performance of your organization is dependent upon your success. And so this is taken very heavily. And so people discuss who is the right person to take on this
Mhm.
role, because they want to do their best to ensure that this person will be successful. And the conversation around the table is what determines who gets the role.
Yeah.
When you have a sponsor who will put their credibility on the line, that I trust Sanya to get this job done, your chances of getting promoted increase exponentially. And so here's the thing, they're not going to put their credibility on the line because they like you.
Mhm.
They're going to put their credibility on the line because they trust you can get this done. They have to have watched you. They have to have watched you in the good times and in the not so good times. And especially how you showed up as a leader in the not so good times, because our business environment is constantly in flux. If you can be a good leader only when times are good, you are not going to be able to succeed when the economy turns. You are not going to be able to succeed when some disaster strikes. And so people have to watch how you show up, and this is
Yeah.
why the name of the book is Show Your Worth.
Mhm.
Show your worth in all your interactions, no matter what the situation is. You see, people are not always be the way you want them to be. The situation will not always be the way you want it to be. But how you show up, how you act, and also how you respond to people and circumstances that are not necessarily positive is going to create a brand for you. When people watch how you show up during the good times and the not so good times, how you bring energy to your people, how you motivate your people, how you learn from your mistakes, how you step outside of your comfort zone and learn new competencies. All these characteristics are needed for an executive to be successful, and you have had to demonstrate them for people sitting around the table to say, I trust her to get that done. Now, listen, we are in a business environment where leaders have recognized that having diversity of thought, having women of color in leadership roles is not just good for the business for CSR and ESG. No, none of that. It's actually good for the business to be more competitive, to be more innovative. It improves our business performance. So they are motivated, encouraged to really support you and encourage you and put your name in the hat and to sponsor you and to advocate for you. But it has to start with you earning it.
Thank you. As you were saying that, I had so many already thoughts and reflections. And one, I was laughing to myself. I'm going to need to re listen to this podcast and take notes. Even though I took so many notes reading your book, I feel like everything that you're sharing now, I'm taking it in. But I'm thinking, I'm actually going to re listen to our conversation because a lot of what you're saying I feel like I could do better, certainly. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask you one quick question before we jump to work life blend family, because this is one area where you and I actually originally connected on too. Is so as a part of my job at Question Pro, I helped develop a 360 feedback technology. And when I was reading your book, you had mentioned having a particular 360 that really had an impact in how you saw yourself as a leader and how it changed your behavior. And that meant so much to me, even though I don't think, it wasn't probably our technology you were using at the time. But to me, it was this brilliant validation of the importance of the work that I do too, which, we only have so many hours in the day and so many years. And so every once in a while, we want to take a step back and say, am I making the impact that I want? And am I spending my time on the things that are going to change people's lives for the better? And so when I read that in your book, I mean, I highlighted it, I put it on LinkedIn, and I said, yes, look at this brilliant woman and champion for women in the workplace and this successful executive. And she found value in this feedback. Like, this is amazing. And so I just wanted to pause on and ask you just to reflect on, for any of our listeners that are thinking. I know sometimes people get a little scared of feedback and what are others going to say, but at the end of the day, it's so important for us to know how others see us, because as we're building this story, as we're building the person who we want to be and building those relationships, it's great to have that maybe more realistic mirror to say, okay, who is really, how do others perceive me, and what is it that I need to change? So, can you tell us a little bit about your 360 story and what it was in there that really stood out to you and changed how you approached leadership?
Yeah. So let me first provide context. As I speak about in the chapter of intentional relationships, and I quote Alex Haley, who wrote the book Roots, very famous author. He says, when you see a turtle on a ledge, you know it had help getting there. And I relate to that. That's the story of my life. In fact, that's why I do the work I do. And one of the people that put me on a ledge was my first line sales leader when I first joined sales, because I was so lost. I was a fish out of water. I had no idea what I was doing. However, his feedback really, really helped me become the successful salesperson that I had become. And so when I became a sales leader, I decided that I was also going to provide feedback to my team so they could grow. And unfortunately, I didn't quite know how to provide feedback. And so I'm a straight shooter. I speak my mind. The good news is you never have to guess. What you see is what you get. But sometimes when I was providing, oftentimes when I was providing feedback, perhaps I was um, rambling, or maybe just what you call belaboring the point, repeating the point. And so a few of my team said in the 360 feedback is that we know she comes from a good place. She's invested in our growth. However, she's honest to a point, it hurts. Another person said she's brutally honest. And so I had to then step back and say, okay, my intention is good. That doesn't mean I stop
Mm.
providing feedback, because I must help them grow just as my boss had helped me grow. However, I need to learn how to provide feedback so it doesn't belittle them, it actually builds them up. And feedback is a mechanism for growth. Feedback is a gift, no matter how it is given. Now, I was fortunate that I worked for an organization where I found a coach that helped me with how to provide feedback. Listen, some leaders are not given this kind of coaching, and so they don't always know how to provide feedback in the right way. And there's a story that I give in the chapter of intentional growth about feedback. But here's the key takeaway is I want the readers to know that for anyone to provide feedback for improvement, this is difficult. It's very easy to tell someone, "Hey Sanya, you did a great job. Your
Hmm.
presentation was on the spot. You were incredible." It is difficult to say, "Hey Sanya, you did a great job, but let me tell you where you can improve." And you never know how that feedback is going to be received. But as a leader, actually, as anyone that cares about the success of others, we must provide feedback, because these are blind spots. They might not even know what they're doing that is not being perceived well. And so whenever someone gives you feedback, take it as a gift.
Yeah.
Don't get focused on their style of giving feedback. Of course, if they gave it the right way, it would make things better. But even if they didn't give it the right way, choose to take that feedback as a gift, because it was hard for that person to give you that feedback. And that feedback is what is going to help you grow. It's not about the person providing the feedback, it's about you receiving the feedback and doing something with it.
Ah, you're so right. And I think you're right in the work context and the life context. I always think about that with my husband, with my child, because you can see even my little boy is 5 and he's learning how to write. And he just can't hold a pencil right to save his life. He has this little kung fu grip on it. And so I'll tell him, Mateo, please hold your pencil. And sometimes he's okay, and other times he gets sad. But I need to say that to him because he needs to learn, and it'll only be with repetition, with me kindly doing it,
Kindly doing
that
it.
he
And that's the key.
exactly,
Yeah.
that he
Yeah.
gets better. And so I think you're right. I think for people to remember that, exactly what you said, that somebody on the other end, it's not easy for them either, but they do it because they care about the other person. And then it's, of course, that process of processing. But thank you for that, because I'm a huge fan of helping others get better, and of constructive feedback, kind feedback. And like you said, sometimes we do it more effectively than others, but that information in itself is a gift. So the last just couple of questions I want to ask you about is life, work life balance, work life blend. You mentioned when you introduced yourself that you are, of course, a professional, a mother, a wife. I don't think I mentioned to you when we were getting introduced. I mentioned I was from Serbia. I mentioned that I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I didn't mention that I moved to Argentina for love. So, as somebody that that received her PhD, in her late 20s, and then went on to get an executive MBA and moved to London for a couple of years for work, um, I took a huge chance. I fell in love with somebody, and he was from here, and I didn't speak a word of Spanish, and my career was really important to me. And I said, you know what? I've had a good career so far, and I figured that out. But wow, this love things had been really hard for me. I've just not found the right man. And so if the man that I found is in Argentina, I'm going to go and I'll figure everything else out. And so for me, I've been here for 8 years now. We're still together. So it was a success story, and have a beautiful little boy. But work life blend is something I consciously work on every day, because a lot of the people that I love and I'm really close with are in the US. My family is in Serbia. My immediate family, my husband, my child, my children are here. And I'm always consciously thinking, I love the work that I do. I absolutely love it. I could do it all day long. But I decided to be a wife and a mother consciously because I wanted to. And that's something that is also important to invest time in. And so I feel like every day it's this little bit, game of a logic of, if I give a little, when do I give a little to something else? When do I focus on work? How much? And I feel like it's not always a straight answer, but I think it's so important for people to consciously think about it. And it's so important for people to know how to arrange their life. And so I know that's something that you talked about and something that's important to you. So I just wanted you to take a little bit of time and share with our listeners how you approach that and how you've managed this, big life moves and this big career, but also having these other important aspects of your life.
Yeah. Sanya, when I look back at my life now, in hindsight, I feel like every experience was given to me to get me to this point, to do the work that I'm doing. And I figured out my work life balance when I was a first line sales leader and my kids were 2 and 4, and I was leading a team of 10 people. Now, remember, it took me 10 years into my career to even ask for a promotion because I never saw anyone that looked like me and I never saw me in that spot. And so once I asked, I got my promotion. And within a few months, I unexpectedly became a single mother. And so I thought that there was no way I could be a sales leader and a mother of 2 children who were 2 and 4 because I was failing miserably at both of those roles that I was playing. I came so close to giving up my sales leadership role because there was no way I was going to give up my children. However, that thank God I got a glimpse of my younger self because when this happened to me, I was completely devastated and I didn't believe I could do it. But I got a glimpse of my younger self and I changed my own mindset from I can't do this to I can do this. And I give you details in my book on how I got myself to strike that work life balance. It was the most difficult thing I've done. Those were the darkest days of my life, but they were also the most transformational days of my life. What I learned in balancing my work and my life, within 2 years, I went from having a team of 10 to a team of 150, having a target of 120 million to over $900 million. So the point I want to make to women, and this is why I say each life experience was given to me. When women come to me and they say, I'm a working mother and I have a hard time balancing my work and my life, or I'm a single mother and I can't do this, I can look them straight in their eye and say, yes, you can do this. And let me teach you how. Because we as women, no matter how much we love our career, we are not just about our career. As you said, you moved to Argentina for the love of your life. You have a child. You want to be there for each person. You could be a volunteer. You could be a caregiver. You could be doing whatever it is that brings meaning to your life. Because when when anything energizes you, whether it is outside your work or within your work environment, you bring that energy to wherever you go, and you are able to perform at a higher level because you are excited. You are able to show your worth in all your interactions. If you don't manage to strike a balance between your work and your life, then you show up to work tired. You show up to work depleted of your energy. You could even get burnt out. And this is not only not good for you and your physical and your mental well being, it's not good for your team. No one wants to see a depleted, complaining, overwhelmed Sanya coming to a team meeting, because you will not be able to contribute value at your maximum capacity. What you want to do is you want to show up in your full glory wherever you are, at work or outside of your work. And the way you do this is by truly understanding what your priorities are, what matters most to you, and then you structure your days around your highest priorities, which also implies that you say no to your lesser priorities. And in my book, I teach the reader how to say no, because if you do it right by being kind and firm, you will not only gain people's respect, but you will also deepen your relationships. If you do it in the wrong way, you will alienate people and you will also suboptimize your career. So, how to say no is very, very important. And I teach you step by step. The reason why most women are afraid to say no is because they think that people won't like them if they say no, and we want to be liked by people. And again, going back to my first sales manager who taught me and gave me the feedback and made me the salesperson I am, also told me, hey, Shelmina, IBM didn't hire you to win a popularity contest. They hired you to deliver business outcomes. You should aspire to be respected, not to be liked. And the
Hmm.
higher up you go in an organization, the more no you will have to say, because the more successful you are, more people and more projects will vie for your attention. And you will have to prioritize what you say no to, what you say yes to, and say no to everything else. And so I teach women that for some women, it's hard to say no. And I teach them that you're not really saying no. Essentially, you're saying yes to something else, because every ounce of energy and attention you give to something that is a lesser priority, you are taking it away from something that is a higher priority, that will move your organization towards more success, that will move your boss towards more success, that will move you towards more success. And success doesn't just mean work performance. Success also means being a good mom, being a good wife, spending quality time with the people that matters most to you. Our success is very holistic. And so when you structure your days around your highest priorities, which must include personal and professional priorities, not only are you able to achieve more than anyone else, because most people are not as strategic and as intentional as you will become once you read my book, you will soar and you will fast track into leadership roles, and You will do that while you have a work life balance.
Oh, you have no idea how much your words spoke to my heart, especially, some of the evolutions I've been going through for the past few weeks, and that, I know better. And of course, I know to say no. And then you find yourself sometimes like, well, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Like you're going, like it's sucking you in. And it's almost like death from like a million small yeses. Like it doesn't have to be a big yes, they just sneak up on you. But taking that moment to take a step back and like really reflect and say, hold on, what's going on? Am I
Yeah,
balancing things the way I want to? Am I showing up? And then starting to say, okay, and the being like parked resonates with me, of course, so much too, because I love for people to like me. It's easier for people to like you than not. And it doesn't mean necessarily if you say no, people won't like you. Maybe they'll like you even more because I've seen myself say yes, 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 and then spiral because I
yeah,
can't.
you
Because
can.
I'm human too. And then I show up as the worst version of myself. And I'm like, well, nobody wants that. They would have probably
Exactly.
much rather said I said no.
Exactly. You know, one of the chapters, and I know it's not the focus of this conversation, but chapter number 2 in my book is intentional attention. I want
Ah,
people to realize that every one of us has 24 hours in a day, whether
mhm.
you're the president of your organization, the CEO, your boss, yourself. We all have 24 hours in a day. Your power lies in how are you going to allocate those 24 hours? Where are you going to allocate your attention and your energy? When you become intentional and strategic about allocating your attention only to your highest priorities, that's when you fast track into leadership roles. That's when you have a work life balance. And that's when magic starts happening.
Shelmina, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time today. Thank you for writing this brilliant book. Thank you for the work that you do. I wish we already had an effective way to clone you because the world needs many more of you. But until we have many more of you, I think the work that you're doing is so important, so brilliant, so timely. So thank you so much again for your time today. For our listeners, that are curious where they can find your book. I know they can find it everywhere, but if you want to just mention a few places, and then for anybody that wants to maybe contact you or follow your work, where would be the best place for them to reach out?
So, first of all, my book is available all over the world. You can buy it at your local bookstores. And frankly, if they're not carrying it, go and ask why, because they should be carrying it. And it's available online, it's available on all the bookstores. If you go to my website, you can also see all the local bookstores where the book is available. You know what? I would like the reader, and yes, you can follow me on LinkedIn, you can follow me on Instagram, you can follow me on Facebook. But what I'd like the leader, I would like to leave this with a couple of thoughts. The first one is that each one of you, the reader or the listener, I want you to know that you have the capacity to lead. A lot of women opt out of the leadership pipeline thinking that they were not born to be a leader. That is not true at all. Had you met me when I was even going through the ranks, you would have never imagined that I was going to be a senior executive someday. With each level of success, more success unfolded, more possibilities unfolded. And so I want you to know that each one of you has the capacity to lead. But I also want you to know that leadership is not easy. It is a responsibility. Leadership has to be learned. Leadership is a skill. You can start showing up as a leader today, no matter what the title is in your organization. I teach you how to build a leadership brand. And what I urge you to do, once you are a leader and as you're going up that leadership ladder, pull others with you, because it's going to take all of us to become the change we want to see. It's going to take all of us to change the equation of gender equality in leadership roles. So step into the pipeline, know you can be a leader, and as you're going up the leadership ladder, bring others along with you. And let's become the change we want to see in our lifetimes.
Brilliant words. Thank you so much again. I this is inspiring, it's motivational, and it's encouraging because I think everything you're saying is absolutely doable. And I'm really hopeful that everybody listening, and particularly women, are nodding their heads and just already have these clear ideas of, what they can do next to really be successful and be happy, both in their careers and their lives. So, Shelmina, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the beautiful energy that you bring into the world. Thank you to our listeners for joining us. And Shelmina, absolute pleasure. You have a huge fan in us. And we can't wait to continue to follow you and see all the amazing paths that you forge for all of us that are cheering and trying to follow in your footsteps.
Thank you for having me, Sanya. And to all the listeners, thank you for investing your time in listening to us, in reading my book, and really fast tracking into leadership roles. Thank you so much.
In addition to being the Empowering Workplaces host, I'm also the president of Question Pro Workforce, and I wanted to tell you a bit more about it because it so brilliantly aligns with our concept of empowerment. At Question Pro Workforce, we help organizations across the world better connect with their employees. We do this through continuous listening survey technology, as well as sharing our deep knowledge and expertise to help our clients know what questions to ask to most deeply connect with their workforce and take impactful action on data and insights they collect. Learn how Question Pro Workforce can be a great partner on your path to creating a really outstanding employee listening strategy and a remarkable organizational culture at questionpro.com/workforce.